First up, we have BlinkLab Limited with the ticker code BB1. Of course, I sit on the board of this as well as a non-executive director, but I would like to actually just introduce you to our chairman, Mr. Brian Leedman. Brian, thanks for joining us.
So, thank you, everyone. This is my second year here. I think I remember seeing lots of faces from the last time I was here about a year ago. And it's quite an audacious day for BlinkLab. If you might recall, I was telling you a story about this technology that can use a smartphone that would analyse your face, and it actually provokes what's called the facial reflex. Let me just explain that for a moment. So the facial reflex is when you, let's say that we're conversing in a very quiet environment and suddenly we're interrupted by the fire alarm. What would happen is every single person in this room on that first beat will blink. Now it's called the facial reflex. It's a neurotypical response. But if you take a soft sound and you put it in front of a loud sound, but you make them milliseconds apart, something interesting happens, and this is research that goes back at least 50 years. What happens is that the neurotypical person does not blink, but a person with autism or ADHD does. Now that science has been placed into a smartphone. Now I've given a very simplified explanation. There's a lot more attributes that go into this type of test, but nonetheless, you have this test all on a smartphone where you can focus your attention on the screen, which is important because you need to be distracted, and then you can get hit with audio and visual stimuli, and the forward-facing camera will analyse your face. And if you respond in a particular way, and more importantly, the time it takes to respond in that manner, let's call it a blink, those calculated in milliseconds tells us through the artificial intelligence machine learning algorithms that we've built up and put into the phone, tells us whether the individual is autistic or ADHD or comorbidity, and also if it is autism, perhaps where the actually child sits in the spectrum. Now it works for any age, but we're focused on young children. There's a particular reason, because we know that with autism, it affects children at birth, but they don't get diagnosed until, say, 6 or 7, and by that stage, their little personalities have largely formed. So what we have is a technology that works on all ages, but we're focusing on young children, because we know that from the medical principle that the earlier you can diagnose anybody with anything, the better the clinical outcome for that patient. So we want to be able to take that average age of diagnosis, bring it down to, say, as low as 2 or 3. Now, where is the commerciality for such a test? We know that with the expenditure from the NDIS, I can tell you that it's budgeted for this calendar year, or financial year, sorry, to be $49 billion. That's approximately 2% of Australia's GDP. Can anyone tell me how much we plan to spend on defence this year? No, it's not less, but it's not that much more. It's $62 billion, which is about 2.3%, and we're trying to get it up to 2.5%. Isn't that an enormous expenditure on the NDIS? And of that, a third of the children in the NDIS are autistic. So it's about a third of the expenditure is only on diagnosis and treatment of children with autism. Single biggest expenditure, and the same goes in the United States and around the world. So that is the opportunity that we can have where you've got a test that's on a smartphone. It has to be regulatory approved, otherwise it's not worth anything. You've got the GPs who have been backed up by so many parents who are trying to get their kids assessed because, why is my kid not crawling yet or walking yet, talking yet, not doing well at school, a whole bounty of reasons. And it clogs up the system because the GP is just the referral to the specialist. And the specialist gets bogged down, which is the reason why the average age of diagnosis is 6 to 7, because it just takes so long. What we've developed is a screening test. Now, which is more commercial? I'm going to ask the room. Is it a screening test to rule kids in to autism or rule kids out? Which is more commercial, do you think? Sorry? Out. Out is the right answer. You want to rule them out. I want this test to be delivered to every child so that all these concerns that are unwarranted because the child is simply just a slow developer and they catch up. You don't need to go through all that formal assessments, particularly if you've got a reactive objective, not subjective, objective test that rules kids out. And that is an enormous commercial possibility. Now, I'm going to spend the rest of the time I have on this stage to talk about the announcement today. I got a bit emotional about this on the weekend because this was a really big test. We had results on 450 odd patients that we published of 91 and 85% sensitivity specificity score. Now that is fantastic on a smartphone compared to a formal diagnosis by a neuroclinician, be it a psychiatrist or paediatrician. Those have been our published results to date. But those results, they're not real world scenario. Companies like ours, we can play a little, hello Sven, one of our analysts who covers us. What we want is as a result, we want it to be as good as possible, but we kind of game the system a bit because we're choosing children that are more highly autistic. They're not so much on the lower end of the spectrum. So the test is not that pure, right? Now, that's the results that we published today, and we've been very open with that in our announcements. What we did is a pilot study of some 485 children between the ages of 2 and 7, and we tested ourselves truly. We had kids all from the spectrum, from the very lowest end of the spectrum to the maximum, in a full real-world scenario. I was anxious because this is a true stress test of the algorithms that we've developed, and it's a pilot study. Now, why is it a pilot study? Well, I wanted a pilot study because just in case the result wasn't so good, I could at least get up here and tell you today that, well, you know, the result wasn't great, but at least it was a pilot study. We're going to take the learnings that we've made from this study before we go and invest the millions of dollars further into the bigger study, all in the United States. And I could tell you that all is not lost. Now, that was scenario A. Scenario B was if we got a bit lucky, we'd be able to show that the team behind BlinkLab have done a superb job, and they have in fact developed these algorithms robustly so that we could get a really good result, which means there's still learnings that we can apply into the main trial, but everything works exactly as it should under a true stress test. And that is in fact what we delivered this morning. And I couldn't be more proud of my team. And of course, Jane here is one of my directors. I know she's very proud. Well done, Jane. And we've done a great job promoting this stock. So we have results today that is 85 and 84% sensitivity specificity, which is really remarkable on a true test across a whole gamut of children, across the whole broad spectrum in a full real-life scenario with 2 major hospitals in North America. And now I can go and tell you confidently, going into this main FDA trial, where we will do another, according to the response from the FDA meeting that we had last Friday, that we can now do a similar number of patients, but not with 2 hospitals. We now have 7 of the most prestigious centers of autism research in the world. They're all in North America. We just signed up the Vanderbilt Kennedy Institute of Autism Research only 2 weeks ago, if you look at the announcements, on top of all the other centers of excellence that we have signed up. So now we've got 7 hospitals doing the enrollments, not 2, but with a similar number of patients, which tells me that we can do this trial in the time period we say we can and get hopefully the same sort of results. The FDA have told us to get approval we need a minimum of 65% for sensitivity specificity. We're currently running at 85, 84. What we have is the most disruptive technology in neurological research to date. This is a big gain in the system in terms of being able to diagnose children at an earlier age. My time's probably up, right? So I just want to finish and say that what we have is a platform technology. It's not just autism. Now, can someone tell me what market do I really want in young children? What other disorder affects so many? ADHD. That's the big one. It's at least 5 or 6 times bigger market. And we've already developed the same algorithms to treat ADHD. Now, we haven't done the extensive testing on ADHD, but we've proven it in autism. We will then focus also in ADHD. I've already got the money. We did a very well responded capital raise in May, so we're well funded. we can go ahead and pursue these other markets as well. And ultimately, like I did with my last company, I can see this being an acquisition target from someone big, particularly when we get FDA approval, which I'm hoping that we're going to get next year. So with that, I really appreciate your time. I'm very proud to be standing here. I was a little nervous coming into this because I thought, well, what if I've got a different story to tell you? But I'm really glad, and what a great event, and thank you, Jane and her team, for organising, and thank you everyone for coming.